Hey guys, what's up? It's Claire and welcome back to Bookmas Day 4. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about 25 books that I want to read in 2025. So I wrote down 25 different books that I for sure have on my TBR for 2025. These are books that I have the goal of knocking off of my either physical TBR or a couple of new releases. So for this video, I did 6 books that I don't have physical copies of. 1 just came out, and then 5 of these are actually brand new releases for the new year. I do have a video planned where I'm going to be talking about all of my 2025 releases that I'm excited about, but these are my top 5. My main goal for the new year is to knock my physical TBR down to nothing. I am on a big book buying ban until I finish my physical TBR. The only exception is my most anticipated new releases, and those are the ones that we're going to talk about in today's video. Come here, buddy.
Begging with all his might to get out of there.
Yeah, come here. You're being the camera. Oh, you baby. Say hi. So first we're going to start off with the 5 new releases for the new year, and the first one is Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez. So this is one of those books that I am really excited for in the new year, like probably one of my top 2 most anticipated. Abby Jimenez is one of my favorite authors. She's my favorite romance author, so as soon as this book comes out, I'm going to be at the bookstore buying it same day and probably reading it in one sitting. So I don't have my glasses on because I'm using the ring light, so bear with me as I squint at my notes. So I wrote little like synopsises of every book that I have on this TBR just because I haven't read them yet, so I don't entirely know what they're about, obviously. This one says it is an upcoming romantic novel centered around the intense connection between Samantha and Xavier. Samantha is forced to admit the truth that her family is in crisis and any kind of relationship would be impossible. Samantha begs Xavier to forget her, to remember their night together as a perfect moment, as crushing as that may be. Only no amount of distance or time is nearly enough to forget that something between them. And the only thing better than one single perfect memory is to make a life and even a love worth remembering. So this book, I'm pretty sure, has like the theme of memory loss and Alzheimer's behind it. I'm pretty sure it's like has to do with Samantha's grandmother, if I remember correctly. When I went to Abby Jimenez's book signing earlier this year, she did talk about this book, and she does consult with professionals on whatever like serious topic she's talking about. So I feel like this book is going to be obviously fun and comedic, but also very emotional as well as educational. So I feel like I'm really excited to read that. My second book for my 2025 TBR is Fearless by Lauren Roberts, and this is the 3rd book in the Powerless trilogy. I think this is like battling it out with Say You'll Remember Me for like my most anticipated read for the next year. The Powerless trilogy basically follows Peyton, who is an ordinary in a world where ordinaries and the powerless are not allowed. That's kind of the gist of the series. Obviously, because it is a series, the context changes a lot throughout it, but this is one of my favorite series. It is a YA fantasy series, and I absolutely love it. I have literally not stopped talking or thinking about it since reading it earlier this year. It's become one of my favorite books literally ever. The 3rd book on my TBR is Wild Side by Elsie Silver, which is the 3rd book in the Rose Hill series. And though I haven't finished her Chestnut Spring series, I have been following along with this one as the books come out, so I have read the 2 that came out this year as well. Something I really like about Elsie Silver's books is that they typically revolve around like the same group of either friends, or each brother will get their own book. So you're introduced to the characters in future books pretty early on in the series, so you kind of get to know them on a deeper level once their book comes into play. And this series in particular follows like single dads, and it's their romance stories. So that's where we're at. Number 4 is Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. This is the 3rd book in the Fourth Wing series. And if you don't know, the Fourth Wing series basically follows a girl named Violet Soaringale, and it goes through her time at Biscayeth War College as a dragon rider. So if you're looking to get into dragon fantasy, I feel like this is a really good start. A lot of people have already DNF'd this series. Basically, after Fourth Wing, a lot of people didn't like Iron Flame. I have not read Iron Flame yet, so we will have to see how I feel about it after I do read it, but this one is a maybe, but right now I feel pretty excited to read this one. The next book I have is Wild and Wrangled by Lila Sage. This book in particular is the 4th book in the Rebel Blue Ranch series. These are like cowboy romances. They're not my favorite because I honestly feel like they are a bit too spicy for me, but nevertheless, I still am enjoying this series, so I do want to keep up with it. Plus, they're just really quick reads. Like, they honestly don't require that much brain power, and they're typically like 300-ish pages, so it's a good palate cleanser. Next, we have all of the books on my physical TBR. So I pulled out all of the ones that I picked for this video. Obviously, I want to finish my TBR if I can, but we're gonna start going through this. So the first book that I have written down is Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmis. This book I actually picked up at Black Friday last year so I could get the signed copy of it, and this was one of those books that I hadn't heard a lot about. I just picked it up off of the shelf and was like pretty interested in it, but since buying this book, I have heard good things about it. I know this book's not for everyone because it is a historical fiction and some people aren't really into that, but I personally enjoy that. This is a historical fiction novel set in the 1960s focusing on Elizabeth Zott, a brilliant and unconventional chemist who faces systemic sexism in her field. After being forced out of a laboratory job, she unexpectedly becomes the host of a new cooking show, Supper at Six, where she uses her platform to challenge societal norms and empower women to embrace science, independence, and self-worth. I feel like this is going to be a pretty empowering novel for women, so I am pretty excited to get into this one and read it. Next, we have The Hotel Nantucket by Ellen Hildebrand. So not this book specifically, but I am holding this book up because I want it to represent the fact that I want to get into Ellen Hildebrand's writing in the new year. I have heard nothing but good things about her writing, especially around the summertime. I heard that her books are like perfect for that time of year, and I live in Arizona, so it gets super hot here, and I feel like this is perfect. I have two of her books on my physical TBR, but this is the one that drew me in the most, so I'm picking this one to represent that I want to read at least one book by her in the new year. Then we have Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J. Maas, and I know what you're thinking. What do you mean you just want to read Kingdom of Ash? Well, no. I'm actually halfway through the Throne of Glass series, and I have been since April. I put a soft DNF on the series because it put me into such a big reading slump because I jumped right from ACOTAR into Throne of Glass, so I do want to finish the Throne of Glass series in the new year, so this is representing that. I want to at least get to Kingdom of Ash. This book is massive. It's literally the size of my head, so it's very intimidating to just like look at the whole series because this is just one book. Now we have another author that I want to read more from, which is Allie Hazelwood. We have The Love Hypothesis. This is another one of those books I pulled out for representation. I really want to read more of her writing. I read Love Theoretically earlier this year because I think it came out this year, if not last year. I'm pretty sure this is like a fake dating science-y romance. I mean, obviously it's science-y, but I really enjoyed Love Theoretically because of the science aspects of it, so I think this is going to be a fun read for me. I've also heard that her books are super quick and easy to digest. Obviously, I've only read one of them, so it's kind of hard for me to tell, but I do want to get more into her writing this year and hopefully finish like all of her books that she's had. I do own every single book of hers except for Bride. That's like the only one that I'm really not drawn to or interested in. And she has a YA romance as well that I don't own. Now we have Emily Henry's Beach Read. This book specifically I do want to read because I feel like this is one of those staples in like everyone's mind, collection, etc. But I also want to read more from Emily Henry this year. I have read Happy Place and Funny Story, loved Happy Place, I enjoyed Funny Story, so I want to give her more chances. I want to read more of her books. I literally own all of them. They've just been sitting on my physical TBR. This has been on my TBR for way too long, so it's time. Number 11 is Hidden Pictures by Jason Rekulak, if that's how you say it. This book is probably a jump scare to some people because I have like all fantasy and romance so far, but this one is a like horror fiction. I was sent this book by my aunt in 2022, so it's been a minute and it is time for me to finally knock it off my TBR. My older sister actually read this one earlier this year and she enjoyed it, and I've been hearing about it a lot more recently, which is surprising, so I've been drawn to this one. It also is pretty cool because it has like, based on the plot, it has these drawings in the book. So when you're reading the physical copy, you get to actually have like a visual aid in the story. So I feel like this is gonna be fun, and this is a genre I haven't read. I've never read a horror book. I'm not super big on horror books because I'm a scaredy cat and I don't like scary things, but this one seems pretty interesting to me, so it's on the TBR. Now we have The Husbands by Holly Gramazio. This is just a fun book that I've been drawn to since it came out. I remember it being on Book of the Month for like a choice, I believe, and then I skipped that month and I saw it in the bookstore and I was like, okay, I actually do have to get this book, so I got it. I wasn't entirely sure how to describe this plot, so I also asked ChatGPT, and they basically said that this is a story that revolves around Lauren, a woman who finds herself repeatedly encountering new husbands under unusual circumstances. Each time she wakes up, she discovers herself married to a different man, yet no one finds this strange. Despite her life continually changing around these relationships, she remains aware of the shifts and tries to make sense of what is happening. So this is just a general fiction book. Obviously, there's like gonna be an element of romance in there, but I also want to read more general fiction in the new year rather than just romance. So I think this is gonna be a good book to have on the TBR. Number 13 is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna, and this has been on my TBR for forever. I think this was one of the first books that I bought when I finally started like reading a lot more again, and I just never picked it up because it is kind of intimidating to look at. It's super thick. This is another one that I requested on Libby, so I plan to read this one soon. I am super drawn to this one. I have heard nothing but good things about it from book talkers, booktubers, everything, and like literally people have tattoos for this book. That's how good it's supposed to be. Also, I have multiple books by Kristen Hanna, so I want to discover her writing in the new year, and I want to at least read this one. If I don't get to the other ones, that's okay, but this one is mandatory. Then we have Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross. Now, this is the second book in the Divine Rivals duology. If you've seen my other videos, you know that I didn't absolutely love Divine Rivals. I did think it was a good book, but it wasn't my favorite. However, I enjoyed it enough that I do want to finish the duology, the series. But I do want to read this one. I have been putting it off for a little bit, so I'm putting it on this TBR to knock it off of my general TBR, if that makes sense. Then we have Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. Jessa Hastings is a new author for me. I actually have not read any of her books yet. I did start Never by her, and I got like 30 pages in, but I really want to discover her writing in the new year. I also really want to know what the hype is about with this Magnolia Parks series. Everyone talks about it and how much they love it, so it is my goal to at least start the series. I don't necessarily need to finish the full series in the new year, especially because I know that this intertwines with the Daisy Hate books and everything, but I at least want to start it, and I want to finally understand the hype. Then we have another romance, which is, or is this a romance? I think this is. Yeah. Or I think this one is classified, like when you go to Barnes, I think it's in general fiction. This is Nora Goes Off Script by Annabelle Monaghan. This is another author that I really want to discover. One of my favorite booktubers, Destiny Sidwell, I'm sure everyone knows who she is, but she loves this author and has said raving reviews about her. So I really want to see what it's about. I want to know. I have this book, and I also have Summer Romance, which was on my TBR earlier this year, but I got into a really big reading slump, so I did not get to it. But I really want to read Nora Goes Off Script. This book has always drawn me in. I really like the plot. So it's basically about a girl named Nora Hamilton. She is a screenwriter for a romance channel whose own life takes an unexpected turn. After her husband leaves her, Nora writes a script based on her troubled marriage, which is later turned into a film. That just sounds really fun to read, so I'm excited. And it's a really short book, like under 300 pages, so I feel like I'll read this in like a day. Then we have The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. Now, first of all, can we just look at this copy? It is so pretty. I literally only bought it because of the design on the pages, but every time I see a TikTok about this book, it makes me want to read it more, and it has been gracing my For You page a lot more recently, so I feel like I need to read this one, and I don't know if I'm gonna love it enough to want to read the whole series, but I want to give it a try and at least start it. I asked ChatGPT what this one was about too, because it's like I understand the general concept, but I don't know how to explain it. So it says a high school student who unexpectedly inherits a massive fortune from the reclusive billionaire Tobias Hawthorne, whom she has never met. The inheritance comes with the stipulation that she must live for 1 year in the Hawthorne estate surrounded by Tobias's grandsons. So I'm pretty sure that, because this is YA, which I would honestly only read this plot if it was YA, because I feel like if it was adult, it would go in a completely different direction. But I feel like the grandsons are just really angry that she inherited everything. But also it says The Inheritance Games. So I don't know if they're like competing for it or trying to like get rid of her so that they can inherit it. I don't really know. We'll have to find out. Number 18 is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This book is one that I recently started hearing about, but it was another one that I discovered on my own, just walking through the bookstore, and I picked it up and I liked the plot. This is another like historical fantasy, I believe, and it just seems really intriguing. I really think that this is something that I'm going to enjoy, but from my understanding, the plot is about a woman named Addie LaRue, and in exchange for her freedom, she basically makes a deal that she will gain immortality if she agrees that everyone she ever meets for the rest of her life will forget her after meeting her. And then in 2014, she is remembered by a man. A man says he remembers her. And then it goes from there. So, I don't know. I think this is going to have an element of romance to it too, maybe. I'm excited to read this one. I think it's going to be really interesting. Next, we have Happily Ever After by Lynn Painter. This is one of my new favorite authors that I discovered this year, Lynn Painter. I really enjoyed her book, The Love Wager, and I want to read more by her in the new year. I own multiple of her books, so I will be reading more of her writing, but this is the one that I picked that I specifically want to read. First of all, I really like weddings in books. I think that they're super fun, but this book follows around a woman named Sophie. She was a bride-to-be, and basically she discovered her fiance's betrayal moments before their wedding. And basically it sends her into a spiral and she becomes a professional wedding objector. And then she ends up teaming up with Max, who I could only assume is on the cover. And he is charming, he's got his own issues, and together they decide that they're gonna object weddings and help people from toxic relationships. So it is a romance novel and it seems fun. I love a good wedding in a book. Next up, we have The Wishing Game by Meg Schaefer. This is another quick read I feel like I'll knock out in like a day. It's also been on my TBR a little bit too long. I haven't had this book technically for a while, but I remember seeing it on TikTok and being super intrigued before it had even come out. This book follows Lucy Hart, who is a teacher's aide, and she basically dreams of adopting a little boy named Christopher. She really cares about this little boy, and I believe he's in her class. When a contest is announced on Clock Island, which is the location from one of their beloved children's book series, Lucy sees it as her chance to win a rare manuscript from the series, which could provide the money needed to secure a home for Christopher. So I think this is going to be super heartwarming, super cute, and it is a general fiction. Like I said, I want to get more into that this year, so I think this will be a nice, fun read. Number 21 is Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera, and this is another Book of the Month book that I really want to read. It is a psychological thriller, so I have been enjoying those recently. I've been reading a few Frida McFadden books earlier this month. I feel like they're very quick reads, and the plot just moves quick enough that it captivates me enough to really sit and read the full book in like one sitting. Basically, this is described as a gripping psychological thriller centered around Lucy Chase, a woman who is accused of murdering her best friend. However, Lucy cannot remember the events of the night her friend was murdered, and she is found wandering the woods covered in her best friend's blood. With no recollection of what happened, the town believes that she's guilty, as well as her family, which further complicates everything. The story is then propelled by a true crime podcast, which hence the cover and the name. This is hosted by Ben Owens, and he delves into the mystery, unearthing dark secrets about the town and its residents, while Lucy struggles with her trauma, amnesia, and a growing relationship with Ben. As Lucy digs deeper, she uncovers disturbing truths, ultimately revealing the true murderer and the complexity of her own memories and guilt. I love a good murder mystery. As long as it's not true crime, I enjoy it. It's a fake story, so I'll read it, but if it's real, no thank you. Anyway, this is on the TBR. Next, we have another thriller, but this is a YA thriller, and this is Five Survive by Holly Jackson. Now, I have actually read the A Good Girl's Guide to Murder series by Holly Jackson, and I really loved that series. It was so good. So I really just want to read another Holly Jackson book, and I think this is the one that I'm going to make sure that I read in the new year. Also, this has like really great reviews on Goodreads, so I feel like I'll also enjoy it. I did try to read it at one point, but there's like, this is gonna sound really silly, but there's a map in here, and I remember opening the map and being like, there's no way I'm gonna remember that, and then closing the book and putting it back on the shelf. But I'm determined not to do that this time. Number 23 is Finale by Stephanie Garber. I really want to read more of her books because they are all YA fantasy, but people really love her writing. So I have started the Caraval series. This is the third book in the series. This is representing that I want to finish that series in the new year and finally knock it off my TBR because I really want to start the Once Upon a Broken Heart series as well. I did enjoy Caraval, so I'm sure that I will enjoy the rest of the series as well. So definitely going to be reading this one. Number 24 is Not Another Love Song by Julie Soto. This is another romance book. The reason I put this one on my TBR specifically is because this is a new author that I have yet to read from. I didn't want to have a bunch of different books from the same authors on my TBR, so I chose this one. This is a musical romance, so it basically follows Gwen and Xander. They're both musicians, one's a violinist, one's a cellist, and both are part of the Manhattan Pops Orchestra. They have a rivalry when Gwen is offered the coveted position of first chair, and Xander secretly desires that role. So they have some hostility, but a powerful attraction grows between them. And I'm sure the rest is history. We know how a romance book goes. They probably end up together, who knows. Anyway, the cover's kind of cute. And I think this one came out earlier this year, if I remember correctly, but I just have not read a Julie Soto book, and she has another book that was super popular for a while, so I want to give her writing a try. And that is all for the physical TBR, but I do have one book that I am going to list as well. This is a book I don't have on my physical TBR yet, but I hope to finally add it to my TBR soon, and that is Sky Shade by Alex Astor. This is the third book in the Lightlark series, which I just read Lightlark. That was the last book I read, and now I'm on Nightbane, and I really did enjoy it. The Lightlark series follows a main character named Isla, and she is a ruler of one of the realms in this Lightlark universe. Basically, every 100 years, the island of Lightlark holds a competition of sorts where all the rulers from all the different realms will come together to try to break the curses that were put on their islands. Obviously, throughout a series, the plot kind of changes, but that is the premise of Lightlark. So that is it. And that is 25 books that I want to read in 2025. I am so over talking. So those are 25 books that I want to read in 2025. This is my solid 2025 TBR. I have to get through these books, otherwise I failed. That's not true. But goal for the new year is to read 75 books, so I feel like 25 is super easy, and I want to knock these out of the way. If you guys have any other book recommendations based off of what you saw in today's video, please leave a comment below. Let me know what you plan to read in 2025, and if you liked the video, be sure to follow me on my other social medias. I'm super active on there. We could be besties. It'd be a fun time. Also, if you liked the video, give it a big thumbs up, and definitely hit subscribe below, and I will see you guys tomorrow with a new Bookmas video. Bye!